Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources, hashtag how I got custody. This video is about continuances. What I say to get one and what I say to fight against somebody getting continuance after continuance and dragging things out. Just when I thought I had done a video on everything that could possibly be done, and I mean, I've done topics from different angles over and over, and I really thought several times, what else can I even talk about? You know, and if I'm not doing a video every day, so, you know, things fall off, and then people don't reach out to me, and if they're not getting fed the latest and greatest take on something, and then people just don't reach out for some reason. I always have people who come back a little bit later, but you know, that's trickles of people here and there. But in any case, this one I know I haven't done a video on before, and I was talking to a guy today, and he said the other side keeps getting continuance after continuance. And he says that's not fair, you know, that's not nice, and why do they need a continuance? But there's some things that you have to know, or you can only get through case law. Most states say in the court rules the court has the power to grant a continuance. That's about all they say about it. So there's some things where the law is not clear, or the law is written vaguely, or it might be confusing. And a higher court precedent, a court of appeals or Supreme Court ruling in your state, or sometimes United States Supreme Court, but mostly in your state, they make a ruling interpreting the law or rules of procedure or how something's done. And in Washington state, there's case law that says here's the factors for granting a continuance. Number one, whether a continuance has been granted before, because, you know, delay after delay after delay, right? Usually ends up being a game at some point. So the court has to consider whether there's been a continuance granted before. And even with all the clarification as to what the court has to consider and how they decide on a continuance, they still can end up doing whatever they want. Oh, I consider the factors of the continuance, and this is worthy of granting a continuance. And it just really comes down to what a judge says, just like in a criminal case, is whether the jury believes the witnesses or not. Whether or not the person's guilty or negligible or liable. You got to convince a jury. So sometimes it's a show and it's an act. That's why it's crazy to me when people say, well, I thought the courts were fair and I could just go in and tell the truth. You've never in your life heard of somebody going to jail that was innocent? Get the frick out of here. You're in denial, you emotional feminine retard. Anyway, factors for continuance in Washington case law say, and you can Google this. You can just Google what. Actually, I have a link. I have a link in my flow page, which has Lexis, the search engine tool that attorneys use. It's a more Mickey Mouse version of it, but it's still the best tool you'll ever get for free. Washington State Court's website has a link to Lexis, a version of Lexis, to look up case law. The vast majority of people are lazy bitches, and I talk to people in Washington, watch my stuff, watch my videos, went on my flow page, and didn't click on the link that says, here's 4 links in Washington that you really should know. See, this is where the biggest problem is. I didn't have these resources. I didn't have all this help that I'm giving you guys. And I still kicked butt in court, but you won't even use the easy access stuff that I'm saving you hundreds or thousands of hours of work. You know, your case lasts 2 or 3 years. That can be thousands of hours that you can have saved. You learn something 2 years down the road that you could have learned by pressing your mouse or clicking a button on James's page. You guys are your own worst enemy. You know, and people hate the way that I'm talking like this because it hurts your butthurt feelings, because I have a guy who's trolling me on YouTube right now because I came on your page to tell you what my dad went through and a lot of people are on your side, but the way I heard you talk and stuff, you're just full of crap and blah, 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 blah. Did I tell a lie? No. The number one problem is being a PAB. A kitty cat, rear end, female dog. PAB. Think of the words that start with those letters that are the equivalent of those words I just mentioned. Continuances can be granted after the court considers whether a continuance has been granted before, asked for before, whether a continuance will prejudice any party, and basically the advantage or the detriment to either party if a continuance is granted or not granted. And then there's one other factor. There's four main factors. Reasonable excuse for a continuance or something like that. And really, it's just laying out factors for you to make an argument. Either way, you always got to make an argument. But if I'm asking for continuance, I'll use the phrase prejudice or substantial prejudice. I will be substantially prejudiced if I can't get a continuance. And see, this is where you don't just know like this one topic. A lot of you guys will say, hey, James, what's the answer on this one topic? And then you go in there and the other side makes an argument. You're like, well, James, they killed me on the argument. Your argument didn't work. I said, well, did you count? I don't know what they were going to say. Did you counter with your due process right and fundamental fairness doctrine? Oh, I didn't know that stuff. Because you're a lazy ass bitch and you want a quickie answer and you don't want to have the full understanding of everything that you need to know. Again, laziness. Laziness leads to cowardice. Well, I don't want to fight that hard. I don't want to, because you're not prepared because you didn't study. Just like you're scared of the final exam because you didn't study or go to class. That's your fault. And you guys want me to give you a crash course miracle the day before trial because you didn't reach out when you're watching my videos. You got to have some freaking accountability. Everybody wants to blame somebody else because the system's unjust and they can't believe it's unjust and they can't understand why it's unfair, so it hurts their feelings, and so they want to wallow in their own piss and not do anything about it, like take all this information and go to war with their kids. Your kids aren't worth it to you. You don't deserve shit, bitch. If you love your kids, you will revolve your entire life around your court battle to secure the bag or secure the win or secure stability with your kids. And you will go through hell for a year or two so you have peace for the next 18 years or however old your kids are. They're 5 years old, you got another 13 years. And then you still have years after that are affected by whether you had a good relationship down in these first 18 years. Do the math, bitch. If you don't care about fighting now and delayed gratification, you want an easy custody battle, you just wish she'd work it out? Yeah, she could work it out. Yeah, she could be reasonable, but she's not. Because your dumbass had a kid with a crazy person. Man up. Stop being a bitch and go to war over your kids. Learn everything. So I'm asking for a continuance, and I say, it's going to substantially prejudice. It's not going to prejudice him. He already did some paperwork. Say, Your Honor, you have a duty of care to make a full investigation into the welfare of the kids. The kids are your number one priority. I haven't had enough time to get all my evidence in. I have a fundamental fairness doctrine and a right to not just respond and answer and be heard, but to fully answer and fully prepare an answer. See, I know the case law on continuances, and then I know my fundamental rights, and then also the courts of fairness and equity. It's not fair and equitable for them to have all this time to prepare to ambush me, and then I got 3 days to respond or whatever. And what is this attorney afraid of anyway? Why can't they just fight me on the merits? Why do they have to get an unfair advantage in order to argue? They're an attorney. They got a law degree. They've been practicing for 15 years. See, I paint this picture with multiple different things because I learned everything I need to know because I actually give a shit about my kids, unlike a lot of you punk-ass bitches who want a magic wand waved like mommy did when you were a kid, or want breakfast served in bed. Because your mommy raised you and she didn't teach you how to be a real man and do stuff for yourself no matter what other people think. You worry about what everybody thinks. And then the other side, kind of the same thing with flip. I'm severely prejudiced if I can't move right now. I haven't seen my kids in months. They've had 2 different continuances. Why do they need another one? This is an attorney with 15 years experience. They've already asked for continuances. How much more prep do they need? They got a whole law firm. And see, if you get a real appointment with me, you'll learn all this stuff. I get people like, let me just get a 30-minute appointment, and they follow up with 40 different questions. You mother effing welfare bitch. That's another hour, an hour and a half. Why don't you just pay for it? I'm not sitting here answering your follow-up questions because you're a lazy bitch. You get some knowledge and you get some chewing out for the reality of stuff, but there's a couple of things dealing